I'll let you know. I am joined. Yeah. Okay. So we do this live.
Five, four, three, two, one.
Wait, hang on. Count me down again. I'm kidding.
Five,
Hey
four,
everyone.
three, two, one. We're live.
If you were coming here expecting professionalism, I apologize. We'll make up for it by being hella smart and funny and good looking. I promise. I'm Steve. I'm joined by my better than your co-host, Glory Jones. What's happening, Glory? How are you?
Hi.
Good to see you. I'm glad that your travels were safe.
Aw.
I do. I worry when you get up into airplanes, man. I have like lots of friends that fly regularly, and ever since that conversation with Garland about like, oh, they denied our plane entry into airspace, and we had to go like way out into the Atlantic Ocean, and we were looking for the missiles and yeah, I get extra nervous when people fly now.
Yeah, I mean, I used to enjoy flying when I was young, but the older I got and the more jaded I got, the less I enjoyed getting on a plane. But I mean, it's life. So,
Yeah,
but it's
and we are.
okay because we have.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
It's okay because we have one of the best on the ground reporters with us who debunks these sorry ass Western imperialist narratives. We have the amazing, wonderful, beautiful, talented Vanessa Beeley with us. Woo!
Oh my god, that was an entrance. Thank you. I'm embarrassed.
Good. Good. That means we're doing
mission
our job.
accomplished.
Look, man, if I'm dragging out like 20-year-old pictures before the live stream, it's okay if you're embarrassed too, because then we can all kind of be on the same level, and it helps.
I'm not going to send you the ones with my Annie Lennox haircut.
Yes, you are.
Oh, my Mohican. Do you remember Bow Wow Wow? Yeah, I'll have to dig them out. But then Glory will really have problems recognizing me. Yeah, for sure.
Right? Like about the only thing that like I don't mind dragging out the ridiculousness that is that like pretty hot, so it's all right. Or at least confident. Confidence goes a long way. It does.
Yeah, we can say that.
So different.
Yeah, it really doesn't look like you.
Yeah, it doesn't help that I have like the skewed perception of having looked the same all throughout my life. So like it's weird. But hey, black don't crack.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, everybody else in this call.
You know what, man? I'm really not that worried about it. I'm really not. Like, are we really going to be comparing looks in the dissident camp? Are we?
I mean, who knows what we'll be doing? We're gonna be, you know.
If they came out straight up tomorrow and did some Hunger Games shit, like half the country would be like, "Oh, thank God." Vanessa's here because the U.S. won't stop blowing the shit out of Syria, and so for the last, like, I don't know what, 38 days now that Biden has been in office, we've been telling you, you know, what's been going on in the Mideast. We've been telling you about the continuation of the policy and the doctrine towards Syria, and people are still walking around acting surprised that we went and on a very thin reasoning went and bombed Syria the other day. And Beeley, you could probably shed a lot of light as to what the buildup to this was, and why this should not be surprising anyone at all.
Well, I mean, we've talked about the fact. Oh, I've got feedback. I can hear my voice. We've talked about the fact that since Biden's inauguration, there's been a serious uptick in attacks against Syria. Mostly, of course, by the US proxies, whether that is ISIS or the SDF, the Kurdish separatists, or PKK, which, of course, was a terrorist organization at one point, according to the United States, and it was one of the reasons that the US imposed sanctions on Syria in the first place, because they were considered to be harboring the PKK that the US is now supporting. And of course, under Biden, what we're seeing is an even greater push for an autonomous region in the northeast. The strike against Syria, or on Syrian territory, on the border with Iraq at the Bukamal area, was allegedly, of course, in self-defense or preemptive self-defense for American. I know, it's just like, I seriously, I can't say this anymore with a straight face.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
like, how dare they put their country in the middle of all of our military bases?
It's just so inconvenient. It's so inconsiderate that they have territory where we want to set up camp and steal their oil and burn their crops and kill their civilians, But anyway, yeah, because there had been retaliation against American occupation of Iraq, there had been a missile strike on the American base in Erbil, I think it was. And one American contractor was killed and 4 or 5 others were injured, despite the fact that Iraq has for a long time now been demanding that the US basically vacate Iraq. So this missile strike was, as I say, a preemptive self-defense strike, and in retaliation for the attack on the occupation base of the US in Iraq. But of course, they chose to hit Syrian territory and to destroy Syrian infrastructure. The Pentagon was, I think, reporting, I saw reports of between 17 to 22 fatalities. I've also seen reports from outside, from Iran and from Syria, saying there was only 1 fatality, and that was a fighter with the PMU, the Popular Mobilization Unit, or forces, which are actually an Iraqi military unit that has been fighting ISIS inside Iraq and on the border with Syria for some time now. So yet again, the US has wiped out a member of a militia that is effectively fighting the terrorists that the US is funding, equipping, and arming inside Syria and in Iraq. So, I mean, the hypocrisy is just layer upon layer. It's becoming really difficult to talk about this now without just either going into complete satire or parody about it, or raging about it. And I veer between the two, because what keeps coming in my mind is all my liberal leftist friends, some of whom have come on delegations to Syria, some of whom have spoken out quite correctly about the externally fomented regime change war against Syria. But when it came to Trump, anything but not Trump. So Biden, with a record of warmongering and fascism and various other really nasty characteristics, was brought in because he's not Trump. And we were all saying to them, what are you doing? This guy is going to ramp up the aggression against the praying nations that have already been preyed upon by all the previous administrations. But this guy is going to take it up like about 100 notches. And that's what we've seen since he's come in. And yet they're still walking around in this kind of collective hypnosis of like, well, it's not Trump. At least, I mean, what was that tweet that I've forgotten the name of the idiot that put that out? You know, at least he did it quietly. At least he didn't put something on Twitter to say that he was
like Amy Siskind or something.
Yeah,
blue check liberal with like a rainbow flag in her name or something like that. And I mean, it's infuriating to see people not only going, oh, well, at least it's not Trump, but it's also really frustrating to deal with the amount of, you know, blue check progressives and people on the left going like, oh, don't blame me. I voted for Bernie, or oh no, I didn't vote for this. Like, yes, you did.
You did.
You sheepdogged for the system for months. You don't get to skirt accountability just because all of a sudden, just because you only now feel uncomfortable for your vote. When you knew about the racial jungle comments, you knew about the Strom Thurmond eulogy, you knew about the crime bill, you knew about the aggression towards Syria, towards Libya, towards Venezuela, towards the entire world, really. And you knew about all the horrible things that Biden has done in his 47-year career. And on top of all of that, you had people presenting it to you on a silver fucking platter. You had people warning you, this is what's going to happen. The DHS is putting out these memos themselves saying exactly what's going to happen. And instead of because if there was any election to not empower the duopoly, I would think it would be the past 2021. I really would. But no, instead people chose to hunker down and sheepdog for even more and blindly follow the most co-opted of co-opted organizations into a perpetual wheel of electoralism that doesn't do shit for us. And now people are just trying to skirt accountability for that with this, oh, well, I didn't vote for this, or, oh, I didn't know this would happen, or don't blame me, I voted for Bernie. No! You need to take accountability and take a fucking backseat and stop gatekeeping the people who got gaslit for refusing to legitimize this system.
We titled this episode, "This is exactly what you voted for that reason, because the justification for, like you were saying, Vanessa, for voting for Biden was okay, well, he's not Trump, and we just have to get rid of the bad orange guy, and then we can push Biden to the left. And there were people who were making this argument who had talked themselves into believing it. Like, I don't think that any rational person would start out thinking that someone as far to the right, as unapologetic about his conservatism, about his warmongering, about his relationship with billionaires and the war machine in general, I don't think anybody could legitimately make that statement unless they had so thoroughly convinced themselves that reality meant something entirely different than what we were all brought up to understand it to be. But that was the argument. We've just got to get him in. We've got to get him in. We've got to beat fascism. And then we can start the healing process. And within an hour or two of Biden being inaugurated, there was a drone strike in Syria that assassinated a family of 4. They didn't even take a breath. You know, if anything, the war machine got happier as it became more and more obvious that the election was going to go to Biden. And I really, like, I'm having a hard time discussing this in terms of pretending like we had a legitimate election. Go ahead and take the channel, YouTube. Go ahead. at this point, I don't give a fuck. We didn't have a legitimate election. We know we didn't have a legitimate election. It was on the cover of Time, where a secret cabal of billionaires and union fucking insiders fortified and secured democracy by having states unconstitutionally change laws, by controlling the narrative through media, a number of other different ways that they discuss in the article. We've got videos up on that.
All the context warnings, YouTube.
Yeah. Are we QAnon yet? For fucking, I don't know. It does kind of crack me up when the Q context warnings show up on this channel, just because of how often we've debunked the QAnon
exactly.
But I already know how to entertain me, so we could avoid, classifying this channel as a Q show. But Jesus Christ, man. Will you please talk, Vanessa, about what you have called the Trump-Biden, I guess, plan with Israel, and the fact that Israel has now been integrated into U.S. Central Command, because this is fucking huge. And so far, you're the only person that I've seen report on this and talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, this was an extraordinary move. Basically, Israel has been integrated into CENTCOM. So it's, of course, it was unofficially integrated into CENTCOM. But that's what I'm saying is, under Biden, we're seeing the concretization of all of the kind of relationship between the Zionist entity and America, of course. And the integration of Israel into CENTCOM, and the important thing for me, and I've been saying this for some time, is that we are seeing an emerging official alliance between Israel and the extremist Islamist elements like Wahhabism, created by Saudi Arabia, and like Ikhwan, the Muslim Brotherhood. We're seeing now this alliance come into public view. All right. We know that Israel effectively supported Hamas in Syria to destabilize Syria. It provided weapons for what it described as the moderate rebels. Well, the moderate rebels were effectively the Muslim Brotherhood factions that were, and include, of course, Hamas. Hamas were responsible for a huge amount of the destabilization inside Syria and the support for the armed groups, including Al-Qaeda, right? And so, put two and two together here. Israel was providing weapons. It was providing hospital treatment for the moderate rebels. So those moderate rebels were from among the Muslim Brotherhood factions inside Syria. Those Muslim Brotherhood factions were supported by Hamas, right? So unofficially, Israel was already working hand in hand in collaboration with Hamas, with Muslim Brotherhood, to destabilize Syria, because it prefers to have, like the US does, a backward-thinking Islamist regime inside Syria. Then it has control of the country, because it doesn't have a progressive, developing, reformist country snapping at its heels, harboring Hezbollah as they perceive it, right? So this integration of Israel into CENTCOM is a major move under Biden. But what's more important in the small print in that report, and that report came from, I think it came from Hayam, which is an Israeli media outlet, but the actual report that the article was based upon came from an Israeli think tank. Now, in that report, what they're basically saying is that this is an alliance between Israel, the US, and I can't remember how they describe them, but more or less the moderate Sunni Muslim countries, right? Which of course include UAE. Now, let's just have a look at that kind of moderate country that is running black sites for the US in the south of Yemen, right? It's conducting torture against Yemeni civilians and Yemeni resistance fighters in the south under the protection of the US. Now, that's something, again, that a lot of people are not aware of that's going on, right? I mean, there's effectively an Abu Ghraib in the south of Yemen, and the US is protecting that. It's protecting the UAE torture sites there. So the UAE, Israel, Saudi Arabia, and the US. So basically, effectively, what they're saying is they're creating a new front against the resistance, right?
Pretty much. I mean, it's all amazing how the agenda with Israel being integrated into CENTCOM and particularly backing essentially Israeli strikes and other acts of aggression against Syria. It's amazing how that kind of just slid under the radar completely because it wasn't like what happened a couple days ago where it was a strike actually committed by the US. No, it was just a strike committed by the Israelis, which we back financially and militarily and just integrated them into our central command. So it's really something to think how that went unnoticed. And oh God, like at this point, I almost wonder why people aren't seeing what the clear plans Israel has are, what their Zionist apartheid regime, what their clear plans for expansion and for a greater Israel are. It's insane that people can't see that. And I feel like part of the reason why is at least the massive propaganda that goes into that.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, if you look at the situation now inside Syria, there's been some really interesting moves on the back of that attack. First of all, the UK is suddenly coming back heavily into the conflict in Syria. It's basically turned back on the humanitarian, and I say that with inverted commas, the humanitarian aid into Idlib via the Bab al-Hawa crossing. Now, the Bab al-Hawa crossing in the northwest is effectively managed by Al-Qaeda. So that means any humanitarian aid that is coming into that area is going to be used by Al-Qaeda as part of their trading hub, right? That's their revenue. So the UK turning back on that tap means it's providing, effectively, it's providing revenue for Al-Qaeda in Idlib. We also know from the recently released UK Foreign Office documents by Anon regarding Lebanon that the UK is or has been for some time infiltrating Lebanese security, intelligence and army structures and government structures, including as high up as the foreign ministry, to gain influence inside Lebanon as a counter against Hezbollah. So providing equipment for the Lebanese army, which they claim is for border defense. But of course, traditionally, it's Hezbollah that has been defending the borders between Syria and Lebanon against the extremist influx that have threatened, for example, Christian villages inside the Lebanese borders. Now, we know for a fact that Turkey has been trying to increase influence in Tripoli, in Lebanon. But we know also from the UK Foreign Office document leaks that the UK is focused on Tripoli. Now, why Tripoli? After the Beirut port blast last year, there has been talk of moving everything, the main port to Tripoli, right? One. Two, and one of the reasons that this war against Syria started was the original US-backed Qatari pipeline was going to run through Homs to the northwest of Damascus inside Syria, and from Homs which of course was one of the first areas occupied by the US coalition terrorist proxies, because it's a natural oil resource area and hydrocarbons. So the reason that that area was occupied in the beginning was to secure the oil and hydrocarbon supply. And in theory, that would then be taken into Tripoli. From there, it would be exported to Europe and to Turkey, etc. So Tripoli, right from the very beginning of this conflict, was pivotal to the US coalition operations against Syria. And the reason why much of this operation started, of course, was because President Assad refused the Qatari pipeline, which was backed by the US, in favor of the Iranian pipeline backed by Russia, right? So just starting to here paint a picture of the fact that the US coalition is not giving up. And when I talk about the US coalition, I'm very much talking about the UK. What we're seeing in Lebanon now is almost a reemergence of the old imperial warmongers, France on one side and the UK on the other, battling over influence in Lebanon. And of course, the UK represents largely the US, France represents the EU. And of course, Israel stands to gain from whichever side gets influence inside Lebanon. Hezbollah stands to lose, of course. And sectarian division is being fomented by both sides, by France and by the UK. And so we have that situation going on in the northwest. And Turkey, as I said, is also, I'm actually looking into what extent it's involved with the UK operations in Lebanon in order to secure Tripoli. But for sure, Erdogan has also been focusing on influence inside Tripoli. So Tripoli is definitely pivotal to the future plans of the imperialist alliance as regards Syria. In the northeast, what is really weird and really interesting is the UK is funding the expansion of the ISIS camp, right, the ISIS Guantanamo, in the northeast of Syria. SDF is currently handing over ISIS fighters to the curators of the camp, which of course is the US coalition. And they're talking about expansion close to the area of Hasaka, which again is one of the biggest oil-rich areas in the northeast. Hasaka itself, of course, is also being targeted by the Kurdish separatists. Now, since the Biden attack on the Iraqi border, there has also been an attack on a gas pipeline in Deir ez-Zor, which again is what they're doing is trying to cut off all supply of essential resources to the central area of Syria, the area that is under the protection of the Syrian government, right? And so an attack on a gas pipeline, of course, is going to further reduce our ability to have electricity, fuel, blah, 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 all the usual things that we need to survive here. So that's one thing. But equally, since the attack, the Kurds have been stealing even more of the resources and trading them across the border in Iraq, and of course then depriving the Syrian people of those resources. Currently, before they were stealing the wheat and the barley, which is reducing our bread supply, particularly here in the capital, but throughout Syria. Now they're stealing agricultural equipment and foodstuff for animals. So what we're seeing here is a deliberate starvation and blockade and besiege from within Syria by proxies of the US, while they are expanding the ISIS camp. Now we can either say, you know, there's a number of theories on this. Are they protecting their own assets? Because of course we know that there's a number of foreign fighters among ISIS. We know that previously the British fighters, the American fighters and so on were kept separately. Journalists were not allowed to meet them, etc. We know the US has been siphoning ISIS fighters out of Syria into Iraq, retraining them and bringing them back into Syria. They've been doing the same thing in Al-Tanf. So basically you now have an expanding ISIS camp in the northeast. You have America training and recruiting ISIS and other extremist groups in Al-Tanf to the southeast of Damascus. You have Turkey encroaching on Syrian territory right across the northern border, setting up basically Turkish-run inhabited areas in the annexed territory to the northwest, actually setting up breeze block homes for people to live in, supplying electricity, supplying cryptocurrency, etc., etc. So what you're seeing right now is a further annexation of Syrian territory. And of course, the bombing of the crossing or the border with Iraq at Bukamal is a threat to Syria to not use this border crossing. That border crossing is generally defended by the PMU and the Syrian Arab Army. So this was not an attack on Iranian militia, which of course Biden and his administration and all the aligned media were blah-blahing about immediately after the attack. Iranian militia were nowhere near there, by the way. These are Iraqi militia and Syrian army. Right, but of course the media just immediately just kind of vomited out what they were told by the Pentagon and by the people in Biden's administration, the BBC, CNN, all of them just basically just threw this out there. Yeah, well, of course, you know, it's in retaliation for the attack on the Iraqi base. It was targeting Iranian militia. No, it wasn't. It was targeting the PMU, which is an Iraqi military unit, which, as I said in the beginning, has been fighting ISIS from the beginning very successfully.
Yeah, and I'm just curious, what's the timeline between the UK funding the expansion of that ISIS camp and kind of the ramping up of propaganda via their via the BBC's was it Mayday series? The one where they speared you and Emma Bartlett and propped up the white helmets, the bastion of human rights protections.
Yeah, well, actually, it's funny you should say that, but Chloe Hadjimathieu actually produced another. Well, it was on the front page of the BBC website 2 days ago.
Is that now is that what you sent me?
Maybe, can't remember.
I think.
But basically, it's a rehash of everything she said in the Mayday series, with a load of photos of James the Missouri and his wife Emma Winberg. Emma Winberg, of course. I mean, this is constantly omitted from the BBC information. Emma Winberg, alongside Paul Tilley, another former military contractor, the same as James the Missouri, established a company called Incostrat. Incostrat was funded by the Conflict Stability and Security Fund, the same fund that is funding the White Helmets and a number of other organizations, basically infiltrating, producing shadow state institutions inside Syria and destabilizing Syria, effectively producing propaganda against the Syrian government and its allies, etc. Incostrat was given the task of effectively whitewashing extremist armed groups like Jaish al-Islam, the Army of Islam, that occupied Douma, where, of course, there was the discredited chemical attack in April 2018, but who were responsible in 2013 in Adra, to the north of Damascus, for burning civilians alive in bread furnaces, decapitating civilians on the streets of Adra, kidnapping, torturing, and carrying out all manner of atrocities against Syrian civilians. And then in Douma, imprisoning them underground, torturing them, keeping them in isolation chambers, using them for staged events, drugging them, according to testimony that I've received. And Emma Winberg was the co-founder of Incostrat, funded by the UK Foreign Office, to basically whitewash armed groups like Jaish al-Islam, who caged civilians as human shields in Douma, by the way. Of course, not civilians who complied with their extremist ideology, but civilians that didn't comply with their extremist Islamist ideology, right? So minority groups that were put in cages and used as human shields in, I think it was November 2015. The crimes, and this group used chemical weapons against the Kurds, right? So this is Emma Winberg, the widow of James Le Mesurier. But of course, the BBC Mayday series simply omits this information, right? And effectively, the BBC is lying through omission with every breath it takes with that Mayday series, right? And the latest article, which was published front page, included an image of my car with the number plate, by the way. So this is targeted harassment, right? I don't own that car. It's foreign nationals here in Syria can't buy or own cars. So that car is owned by somebody else. I'm using it. So it puts myself and the owner of the car at risk, because initially when they published it, you could read the number plate, right? When a colleague of mine wrote to them and asked for their policy on publishing people's private vehicles with a number plate on there, they suddenly blurred the number plate. Right? But not before I screenshot it. Yeah.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
Man, I didn't read far enough down in this to the part to where she went after you, because I was so nauseated by like the opening couple of paragraphs where she's like, James Le Mesurier was this dashing officer. There's this like effusive and emotive description of him and Emma's wedding in this article, and it's gross. Yeah, I didn't even get to the part to where they were dragging you. Now I'm there, and that's fucked up, man.
Yeah. I mean, this is, you know, when you put it into the context, I mean, this is, you know, Syria is a country where there are still terrorist cells everywhere, right? It's different to have an image on, say, Facebook or Twitter or whatever. It's not the same as putting it on the BBC website on the front page, right? It's already all over Twitter because, of course, everyone's been triggered to pick it up from the BBC website and republish it. But as I say, that's targeted harassment. It can't be seen as anything else. I had no idea they had that image. I had no idea they were going to publish it. So they will be receiving a legal letter on the back of that. A number of people have written to them, and I've written to them and demanded that they take it down, because it's absolutely, it's unbelievable.
They're still trying to give cover for the OPCW report in this article.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
this is fantastical.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's extraordinary. And I mean, you know, you have to remind yourself that Chloe Hadjimatio has never been inside Syria, or certainly not since the war started. She visited as a tourist maybe before the war, but she's never been inside Syria. So she seriously hasn't got a clue. I mean, I was kind of laughing because I was going to take pictures. There's about 10 cars on my street, all of which have pictures of the president in the back of the car. Actually, you kind of struggle. Probably 50% of the cars in Damascus have photos of the president either in the front window or in the back window. You know, but anyway. So yeah, the BBC is continuing its targeting of those that are ripping apart their narrative on Syria, and not only on Syria, you know, on COVID-19, on Iran, on China, etc. I mean, more and more the BBC now is just perceived as an extension of British intelligence. You know, it's becoming more and more blatant now. It's difficult to even find the journalism in among that.
I mean, that's accurate. Jesus Christ, dude, this article is just such a shit show, and I understand that people are heavily propagandized, but the desperation that's pouring off the page on this thing, like just the reaches in logic that are being made, and the, I don't know, over, at least to me, the blatantly obvious, like, finger pointing at you and at Peter Ford and Piers Robinson and his group in this thing.
Dr.
Like, I'm
Piers
reading
Robinson.
I'm reading it, and I'm like, almost everyone this bitch is smearing is a guest of the show and a friend of the show. And like, I feel pretty good about that, to be perfectly honest. Like, I'm, but again, man, the desperate attempts to discredit you guys that are so blatantly obvious in this article speak to just how far gone these institutions are, and how much they've lost the plot, and how they're desperately trying to, like, make people so afraid or so mistrusting of anyone other than them. And these attempts just seem, I don't know, man, hollow, flaccid.
Yeah. And I mean, it was interesting because I was talking to Peter Ford about the developments inside Syria, and he echoed what you just said. He said, actually, it's a demonstration of the desperation. They know that they've lost militarily, effectively. All they can do now, the US in particular, is to sit on resources and to deprive Syria of its own resources. That's all they can do. And start circling as they are doing in the northwest, in the northeast, increase attacks from Israel. But it's a bit like the ISIS camp. I mean, what the hell? What are they going to do with this? I mean, it's kind of bizarre. Yeah, let's set up an ISIS Guantanamo type camp on Syrian territory after we've told everyone for 10 years that we're here to fight ISIS. I mean, why not hand ISIS fighters over to the Syrian government? Hello.
At that point, you're kind of giving away your investment, though.
Yeah, well, exactly.
It defies all logic. It's like from the Duma false flag. Like, why would Assad gas his own people when they're winning? And like, that's what people fail to realize.
And if President Assad, I love how it's always President Assad that is personally carrying out every single crime that is described in the West. It's sort of, it always kind of makes me laugh. But also, why is President Assad, why is the Syrian government rebuilding all those hospitals that they deliberately destroyed in terrorist-held areas? Why is it not gassing the people now that they're completely comfortably under their control? Right? Suddenly it all stops when the terrorists leave, right? But nobody's making that connection. I mean, tomorrow I have a meeting with the health minister to talk with him, well, not with the health minister, but with one of his technical guys, actually, because to talk to him about the effects of sanctions on the hospitals here, which are equivalent to the effects of military action against those hospitals, because they're effectively being destroyed by economic sanctions because they can't get replacement parts for the equipment. They can't bring in new equipment. Now, if you go to the northwest, if you go to the so-called hospitals that have been established by Western NGOs in Idlib, you will find state-of-the-art equipment supplied by the West to the terrorist-controlled areas inside Syria, which of course now have been reduced down to the northwest and Idlib and northern Idlib. And so, this whole scenario is just, it's obscene. And what is just people don't engage their rationale. Like you just said, you know, why on earth would the Syrian government and the Syrian army use chemical weapons, pretty ineffectual chemical weapons, because they couldn't get away with the sarin narrative, so they've reduced it down to the kind of chlorine narrative. Well, chlorine is pretty useless. Unless you're going to shut someone in a room and keep pouring gallons of chlorine into the room so they're breathing the gas. Anyone that has access to an open door or an open window can get away from chlorine.
Well, yeah, and the OPCW buried the toxicology report, which basically confirmed that the symptoms described weren't consistent with the symptoms associated with chlorine gas. So it's like, how do you just ignore that? The fact that that, like, you know, open source intelligence agencies like Bellingcat just completely bury that and then try to discredit the scientists involved, like how they tried to go after Ian Henderson for his engineering report, which confirmed that the cylinders were manually placed there instead of dropped. It's insane to think of all these facts that are just glossed over to manufacture consent for this scheme for an oil pipeline. It's insane. And then they frame it as some big human rights thing.
We get people who just this morning on Twitter, they were like, and they have to be State Department accounts. They have to be. but trying to like argue with me and engage with me in a fucking Twitter debate about how long the U.S. has been fucking around in Syria, and like they're like, in their mind, in the minds of this person, the U.S. had no involvement in Syria whatsoever prior to 2013.
What?
That it's a brand new thing, that the U.S. hasn't been fucking around specifically in Lebanon, Syria, and what was the other, Iran and Iraq since the 50s. No acknowledgement whatsoever of the storied and easily findable, searchable, readable, and digestible long history of our involvement there. And trying to like memory hole the CIA's Mideast operations going back to 1953, you know, but like legitimately being like, no, you're a conspiracy theorist. You have no idea what you're talking about. The U.S. has never been in Syria prior to 2012.
Right. Okay. There's not much I can say to that. Really, read Stephen Gowans, the Washington's Long War on Syria. It's one of the best kind of anthologies of American involvement in destabilization of Syria.
I'll write that down.
It's a really good book.
Yeah. If you think that's the extent of our involvement in Syria, you're fucking dumbass or chump or.
I don't know.
But this is going to be the kind of like narrative management that we're going to face going forward too, when we all try to go and report on this, to where people are going to be like, no, you don't know what you're talking about. There's not been any involvement. This is new, and it's only because of the formation of these new terror groups that the U.S. is totally not arming, funding, and training. I don't know why you would suggest that, you know, that you like show them. and they're like, oh, that's fake news, or you're making that. It's a C-SPAN clip of Hillary Clinton admitting that, whoops, we created and funded Al-Qaeda.
Joe Biden admitted in 2014 that the US is funding ISIS. John Kerry admitted it in 2016 in a closed session, or September 2016 at the UN. I mean, Tulsi Gabbard has made a public statement to that effect. You know,
yeah, but everybody knows
it's all
that
out
she is
there.
literally the female version of Bashar al-Assad. I mean, that's just science.
No, but it's the fusion between like Bashar al-Assad and Adolf Hitler. So you got like Bashar al-Hitler. Yeah,
I don't know. I just fell out. They can't all be zingers. Fuck you, Jones.
I wasn't judging you. Well, you know what? Fuck you then, Steve.
Oh man.
Oh dear.
I clicked on and read down the article that you sent me earlier this week about the secret nuclear facility in Israel that's all of a sudden undergone a
Yeah, Dimona? Is that the name?
Yeah, the nuclear site in Dimona, which and the article, I mean, it's from an Israeli publication. So the article kind of like speaks in they're trying to be incredibly neutral about the fact that Israel illegally and secretly developed nuclear weapons, and it was like the most horribly guarded secret ever. And now just everybody's okay with the fact that Israel entirely illegally developed nukes. And I don't know what they're building at this facility, but I'm pretty sure they aren't kindergartens.
It's the only democracy in the Middle East, Steve.
Oh, exactly. And, you know, Iran is developing its nuclear capability, and that's, you know, that's criminal, right? I mean, hello. You know, it's this, I mean, to some degree, look, the US is never going to take on Iran. Never in a million years. And neither is Israel. Right? I keep saying this. The war against Iran is the war against Syria. And it's the intensification of the war against Syria on the basis that they're attacking Iran. Right? We just saw Biden carry out a preemptive self-defense, blah, 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 strike against Iranian militia. Well, no, it wasn't against Iranian militia. We consistently have Israel bombing Syria on the basis that it's bombing Iranian bases or Iranian positions inside Syria. Well, one, Syria is a sovereign nation. It has the right to have any country it likes operating on its soil with the permission of the internationally recognized government, right? So Israel is violating international law by preemptively self-defending itself by bombing Syria because it believes there are Iranian militia inside Syria. And the US is effectively doing exactly the same thing. I mean, there's no difference between US policy and Israeli policy. And the integration of Israel into CENTCOM just basically hammers that fact home, particularly as far as Syria is concerned. So now it's open war. Now we know that US and Israel are basically one hand, and they'll be working with Saudi Arabia, UAE, all the funders of the extremist groups inside Syria as a collaborative alliance against Iran, against the threat of Iran. But effectively what that means is against Syria, right? They're never going to go full on against Iran.
Well, especially not when Iran, Russia, and China are having joint military exercises. And if we're not at like 30 seconds to midnight on the doomsday clock yet, or like a second to midnight on the doomsday clock yet, it's because we've got a bunch of optimists running it. The United States is a belligerent nuclear power. practicing escalatio over the entire planet. And on the other side of that coin, we've got Russia, China, and Iran, which are also at least 2 out of 3 nuclear-powered nations with no small amount of belligerence or authoritarianism on their own side. And in the middle, we've got people who just want some fucking agency. And I'm not asking for anybody to solve the world's problems on this live stream or anything, but I mean, well, fuck, dude, how do we get a global anti-nuclear war movement going again? Because we're heading for it. This is, I'm not going to say it's inevitable because I don't think much is, but I mean, this is, we've got all the wrong people in the positions of perceived power, and they're being told what to do by genuine sociopaths that are either going to be so far deep underground or off planet by the time the bombs start flying that they're not going to give a fuck.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and the situation here is really tough for people. You know, it's hard to see how on earth this is going to be resolved without the loss of huge amounts of Syrian territory. That's the way it's heading at the moment. You know, Israel is occupying illegally territory in the south. America, as I say, from Jordan up the whole length of pretty much the border with Iraq, is occupying vast swathes of territory there, as proxies are occupying the oil-rich regions in the northeast. Turkey has an entire buffer zone, almost the entire length of the northern border, right? And is encroaching further and further into northern Idlib. All that is left, of course, is the border with Lebanon, but Lebanon, as I've pointed out, has been put into economic freefall. It had the Beirut blast, you know, which has left the country decimated economically, structurally, and from a humanitarian perspective. Yeah, I mean, you know, I've always said it, the world war has been going on in Syria for 10 years. The scary thing now is that we really have probably, and that's saying something, the most psychopathic American administration in history, voted in by the anti-war groups. Because I don't call them anti-war, you know, because what have they done? They've just brought in, I mean, you couldn't get a bigger collection of war ghouls if you tried.
No, it's mad how many people in the anti-war movement were cheering on some of these picks. Like, oh my God, I'm so excited for Antony Blinken because he's not Mike Pompeo. Oh my God, they picked Bill Burns to be CIA director? That's like the best possible pick you could make for a CIA director.
Medea
it's going to be all right.
I want to make that perfectly clear. Medea Benjamin was happy with Bill Burns and with Tony Blinken.
What?
Yeah, acting like it was a step in the right direction.
Yeah. Well, you know, Code Pink supported white helmets. They were putting out petitions for the white helmets. I can't remember. I think it was back in, I think it might, I could be wrong, but I think they were supporting the nomination for the Nobel Peace Prize in 2016. So, you know, my respects for Code Pink plummeted at that point. Anyway,
I put a lot of that down to the ignorance of the DC bubble. like the self-reinforcing fucking, because it's I in the last couple of years, and I'm not trying to excuse anyone's, you know, lack of doing independent research on their own. Like, that's bullshit. And I hope that in the last 4 or 5 years, like, somebody besides me gets to talk to Medea Benjamin about this. Although I do hope to see her in DC in a couple of weeks when we're there.
And March 18th.
March 17th, March 18th.
Yay.
Clovers for Assange and
fuck censorship.
Wonderful fuck censorship protest immediately after that we're going to join. Get there and donate, and if you can't donate, share the link to donate. And pretty sure we're gonna have to put up a different fundraiser anyway, because GoFundMe is not being nice to Andrew. Anywho, I hope that, like, in the last 4 or 5 years, somebody has been able to educate Code Pink on the white helmets and on Syria in general. They're good at making a political statement in terms of being opposed to war regardless of who's in office, but I think that they do try to play the game a lot to where, like, I think their funding relies on them being nice to Democrats, at least until they absolutely don't have to, and that's just fucking bullshit, because that's not going to get people to fucking march in an anti-war protest. If you're, like, cozying up to Tony Blinken or Bill Burns or Joe Biden, and everybody that's with Code Pink was telling people to vote for Joe Biden. If I'm running an anti-war organization, I am showing you every day that we don't have free and fair elections, that it doesn't matter which puppet they put into the Oval Office, the bombs always fucking drop. If you want to be anti-war, you cannot be partisan.
Mm-hmm.
Full stop.
Exactly. Yeah. And, you know, I saw quite a few amusing memes come out after Biden had bombed near Bukamal, and, you know, Biden bombs with diversity was I mean, this is the thing, you know. God,
the shirt that our friend Mona made for Richie Medhurst, the Rainbow Coalition Death Cult.
Yeah.
I mean,
there were a load of really good memes flying around. So pretty soon after.
They really should just paint a rainbow flag on every Hellfire missile. They really should. Fucking, especially if Amy Siskin's gonna run around all fucking happy about it. You know, and look, I understand that Amy Siskin and Charlotte Clymer are crazy. Yeah, there it is.
That's the one.
Big up, Mona.
Designed by Mona. We love you.
The Rainbow Coalition.
Yeah, brilliant.
Fucking dope.
It's so scary. Really, it's, I mean, and, you know, it's the way they're all, I mean, I think it was you that put out the tweet by Jen Psakis, you know, where she's moaning about Trump bombing Syria. But, you know, when Biden bombs Syria, oh, that's okay. It's self-defense.
And of course, the Gen bot had to do the propaganda and the smear in it, you know, where it's well, of course, Assad is a brutal dictator.
No.
But you know, the Syrian people Syria is a sovereign country, and we don't have unilateral authority to bomb them. What happened to we're not gonna let the president bomb any country unless there's congressional authorization for military action.
Mm.
It's like when all these blue check liberals would be like, "Oh, well, personally, I don't like Assange, and I don't think he should be charged under the Espionage Act. But DNC smear, CIA narrative management, another CIA talking point, and he's a rapist."
Right. We
Yeah.
don't need your help on this one, Rachel Maddow. We don't.
No, it's the same. I mean, we have the same thing. You have someone, establishment, like Peter Hitchens, for example, who's, doing a great job on the OPCW, but he will still maintain the bad President Assad, the good rebel narrative. And the thing is that while these people are reducing the debate down to this, but he's a tyrant, but he's a criminal, but he's a genocidal maniac, but that discussion, that debate doesn't actually get interesting. It doesn't go into the complexities of this conflict. It doesn't go into the complexities of the society here. You can't have that discussion because everyone goes, "Oh my God, no, don't talk about Assad. Don't talk about him in any positive light whatsoever. Don't analyze this. Don't actually do any research. Don't check if anybody spoke badly about President Assad before 2009 because they'll find out they didn't."
No, he was a media darling right up until that moment.
Yeah, Assad is like pretty neoliberal. Like, he liberalized parts of Syria's economy, and all of a sudden,
well, I mean, actually,
oil
the
pipeline
Ba'ath
going
Party,
through Syria.
Yeah, the Ba'ath Party is effectively it's socialism. And actually, if you speak to Peter Ford about how he perceived President Assad during the time of 2003 to 2006. He saw him as a reformist. Tony Blair was courting him. They wanted to give him a knighthood in 2002. He was recommended for a knighthood. And it's all in the Bush-Blair emails. They were going to try for a different relationship with Syria to avoid having to go to war as they did in Iraq. So that was the different relationship. Let's bring the guy on board.
Those are the options.
Yeah.
Well,
come on board. We'll bomb the shit out.
We're gonna have to bomb him.
Yeah, that's basically what it comes down to.
If he will comply.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
It's really cute. I'm sorry, I had to say that.
I give up. She's
never apologize for your pets unless they're like shitting on my floor. But I mean,
she's such a virtue signaler. It's like she always has to come on camera.
we are not trying to run. We're not even trying to be as like overly professional as RT. Okay. I would prefer moments of pure humanity on the live stream than like a completely sanitized fucking absolutely sterile environment with which to put forth fucking official narratives. That's an adorable kitty cat. It is.
Say hi. Oh God!
That cat is gonna show up in a BBC article as an Assad puppet.
Oh my God! Yeah, I should put something on her. I should put an Assad sticker on her. Like
that cat has chlorine gas on it.
Doing that.
I can smell it. I can smell it on her backpack.
Doing that propaganda.
Oh God.
That was bad. That was bad. That was
Why the fuck? If you think that there's sarin or chlorine gas on a backpack, why the fuck would you sniff it? Like, if I think that there's something, like, if I think that there's something remotely poisonous on that, I'm like drop kicking that. Yeah. I'm not sniffing that to prove like, yeah, like something stings there. That's like if I'm at a protest and I'm like, you know, I want to see if there's actual pepper spray in those pellets you have. So I go and shove one of their fucking pepper spray guns up my nose and be like, yeah, that's pepper spray. Like,
yeah, I know. And people, you know, the extraordinary thing is, I mean, while they're claiming it's potentially sarin, of course, you have the video footage of the Russian general going into the house that was allegedly hit with sarin with no gas mask on and filming, and then they're kind of going, yeah, but they kind of, I don't know what they did, they covered it all up. They covered sarin up. Wait, what? You know, I don't know. I don't know whether I'm more depressed that they think people are so stupid they're going to fall for this without asking any questions, or that they're so stupid that they produce endlessly these narratives that don't make any sense if you just scratch even lightly below the surface.
Well, this goes back to my theory on manufacturing confusion, and that's the primary function of the media now that consent has largely been manufactured for almost 20 years now. If it wasn't manufactured before, as the ink was drying on the Patriot Act, they had largely gained that consent. And so when we've got these like seemingly conflicting narratives that all reinforce the same basic propaganda, which is empire expansion good, anyone who is trying to stop empire expansion bad, terrorist, whatever, when we have that, and it's such a thin narrative, you know, or like it's such a thin defense, and it's so easy to debunk. What the defense for that is to call everything that doesn't jive with the official narrative QAnon, which is what they've done. Like everything that isn't, you know, out of the Biden administration now is QAnon nonsense, and it's going back to conversations about 9/11. I mean, it's going to be, especially with that dumbass ex-spook that came out and was like, all right, in case anyone was curious, even though no one asked, we know the Russians killed Kennedy.
Magic bullet theory confirmed.
Lee Harvey Oswald was the sole gunman. Go back to bed, America. Your government has figured it out.
Move on with your lives.
Yeah.
And real quick,
to
kind of, we have some super rays over on Rockfin. So thank you. Thank you for that. It is much appreciated. Thank you, Scipio Africanus. Thank you for the super ray. And TM gave us $10. BBC isn't fit to wash my dog's balls. Stay strong, Vanessa. So thank you guys for the super rays. It's always appreciated.
That's funny.
You know what's hella funny is there was a local band here called the Dogs Bollocks.
I'm sorry, my cat is just determined to be a superstar.
What's the cat's name?
Feiruz. Now I've just offended every single Lebanese Syrian in the world that I called my cat after their most loved singer.
I just want to be able to know who to credit when we do the description later.
Oh, okay, yeah, Feiruz.
Yeah. I don't know how much time you have, Beeley. I
have no idea.
Okay. Because there's a couple of, oh my god, I just scrolled past the blobfish.
Oh, I love that.
So fucking funny.
Did you show the picture? Has Glory seen that?
I haven't.
Of what? A blobfish? I mean, I'm a marine science nerd, so I have seen tons of blobfishes, and I've seen like monkfishes, which are kind of similar as well, but they're a bit different because they have a larger head and
But the blobfish, because what that was making me think of was that great pile of Jello, which was Cassandra. When I saw that, I was like, "My God, that is."
Yeah,
that
I'll look
right?
up a picture of what a blobfish is for context, and then I won't show you guys a monkfish. That's just me going on like a complete tangent because I'm a fucking nerd.
See, I thought you sent that because of the particular reporter we were talking about and the almost like just similarities in
Which
facial.
reporter was that?
I'm not going to say that on the stream.
Okay.
I don't want to deal with the fucking hate mail that's going to get generated when that happens.
No, that's not.
Suffice it to say, it is from one of the outlets. It's from one of the outlets that does a decent job on the things that they cover and a shit job on the stuff that they refuse to go near. Okay, and half the time that they do a decent job on the things that they cover, it's because somebody else broke the story and they're not telling you about it.
Oh snap! Oh snap! I have an idea.
Yeah, but that what is it again? Blobfish.
The blobfish.
Well, and then because come on,
show us the monkfish then.
Yeah, that's a monkfish. It's
that's more fish-like.
But it's like a bottom-dwelling fish, so because of the pressure at the bottom, it kind of looks like that. That's why it's kind of blobby like the blobfish, but it's still very different in terms of like its head.
So that was a shout, or Jackson Moon of Alabama has been doing like insane work for 20 fucking years, man. Those guys are on it, usually earlier than everybody else. Yeah, that blog. I remember that it was like my RSS feed way back in the day was like Moon of Alabama and Fire Dog Lake, and like that was about it. Fucking when Greenwald was like hungry and Kevin Gastola was like 9 apparently because he just doesn't age. That dude looks like he's fucking 12 right now.
Wait, how old is Kevin?
He's 73.
Okay, you're lying.
I'm kidding. He's
not. But
oh, okay. I was like, what?
Let's find out.
Yeah, but Moon of Alabama have been shit on COVID. Sorry. They've totally sold their establishment narrative.
Yeah, there's so many good people and good outlets that just like hit a wall when it came to COVID.
Yeah. That's one way to describe it. I don't know, I mean, they're out and out pushing the whole lot. Vaccines, lockdown.
Yeah. They hit like a partisan wall of bullfuckery and just
No, they did a great job on Syria, etc. That was just weird. And actually, a huge number of pro-Syria. I mean, one of the weirdest things for me was I did a speaking tour in Canada. Now, the majority of those peace groups have blocked me over my stance on COVID. So, they hosted me in Canada to speak about Syria. And then when I had a position on COVID, I'm blocked. I mean, that was actually when I started to say the new fascists are the left. The left is the new fascism, actually.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're pushing out this new wave of censorship following the January 6th insurrection. They're pushing out censorship following that, and they're also pushing out all this vaccine bullshit. Like AOC, I keep calling AOC's IG Live and IG Stories the home of narrative management, because that's where she goes on like her little famous rant talking about her fearing for her life in the Capitol insurrection. And that's also where she dedicated like an hour-long story to her getting the Pfizer vaccine. Like,
while wearing like a $45 tax the rich shirt with her name on it that you can buy from her campaign website where she works for the government.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, really, we put an Instagram influencer in Congress, and she's doing the kind of job you would expect an Instagram influencer to do, which is what she's fucking told. And I don't know why you thought it was going to be any different.
Exactly.
Exactly.
It's freaking wild. There's some folks in the chat that kind of figured out where we were headed, even though we didn't say the outlet out loud.
Yeah, I mean, we got a pretty smart chat. Y'all are dope.
Is this a chat for COVID truthers? What the fuck is a truther?
Yeah, what do you mean by
point? Like, I don't even know what that means. What we do here is we have grown-up conversations about things, and they don't normally.
Oh, hang on. Where the COVID truth is?
Right, I don't know. That's what I'm trying to figure out. What
is it the chat
by truther? What that is? I personally never been like COVID's a hoax or any of that shit. The things that we look at are national security, state, and government overreaches where COVID is used as a pretext. We've had some decent conversations about like how pharmaceutical companies operate and the fact that you can't sue a vaccine manufacturer.
Hold on. I mean, I don't know. I mean, look, people, it's not like the first time that a pandemic is not a pandemic, right? Let's look at the statistics. And let's go back to 2009 when WHO produced the other pandemic, which was the swine flu that wasn't a pandemic. It's the same old thing. It's the same as the endless war. It's the same as the perpetual war. Everyone kind of goes, now everyone's talking about the Uyghurs in China, right? That's the latest humanitarian hoax. And everyone's falling for it all over again. And every time you say to them, well, hang on, what about Syria? What about Iraq? What about Libya? What about Venezuela? What about? You get accused of whataboutism, right? But we're talking about history. Look, effectively, your governments are going to lie to you. Your governments don't give a shit about you. They will genocide peoples in other countries. The US is a settler state built on the genocide of indigenous Indians in America, right? So why do you expect this government to have any kind of benevolent feelings towards you? Or why do you expect it to be telling you the truth? It isn't. So our job, if you're going to call us truthers, it's to call.
God damn it. Damn it.
Oh, and it's Grayfield too. So
no.
I'm gonna go ahead and I don't know how. At any rate.
Well, and while we're here, we also have Klaus Schwab in the chat. So Klaus, fuck you and your Nazi dad.
And your Nazi papa. Meet the little family jackboots. Yeah. Fucking and real quick, man, the people who make the vaccines tell you that it doesn't like get rid of COVID. It tells you that it may or may not alleviate some symptoms, and that you will, likely you will potentially infect people for up to 3 weeks.
You kicked Vanessa.
Yeah, in case she needs to pop back in.
Aww. I miss her.
Yeah, like, I'm not. It's not about being anti-vaccine, man. It's not. It's about making the entire population the experimental group without their consent, without their informed consent. What governments and pharma did was ratchet up fear for a solid 13 months and then put in untested rush, never before successfully produced mRNA vaccine.
We're the third trial run. We're the third, we are the test run.
Yay!
Like, usually it takes years because it has to go through, 5 or 6 stages, and they've gone through, 2, maybe 3.
Yeah, the normal vaccines take 12 to 20 years before they're introduced to the market. We're on.
Yeah, but it's not only that. It's the fact it's the mRNA. It's an untested technology that is being injected into you. I've just come back in where I left on my rant, right? And big pharma. I mean, I did a couple of articles. Whitney has done numerous articles about how big pharma is profiting from this, right? And as soon as profit comes into any kind of profit complex comes into this, you have to start questioning the motives of your government. In the UK, our government is heavily invested in the development of vaccines. It's heavily invested in and invested by Gates and his vaccine program, right? And the number of deaths and adverse reactions from the vaccine is being swept under the carpet by the media. It's being downplayed. If you die a couple of days after you contract COVID, even if you had a dozen other comorbidities, you definitely die from COVID. If you die after you're given the vaccine, it's nothing to do with the vaccine. I don't care what you call me. I have the right to defend my health sovereignty, right? And that is being taken away from us. Don't try and tell me the government is not going to make vaccines mandatory. It's already mandatory, right? The vaccine passport is coming into effect. You can't go to work if you don't have a vaccine. You soon won't be able to get a bank loan if you don't have a vaccine. You won't be able to leave your house. You won't be able to go to the pub. You won't be able to go to the restaurant. Your entire life is going to be controlled by big pharma. And people are just handing it to them on a plate. So yeah, I object to that because I reserve the right to say no.
And it's not
Really
just
simple.
your entire life is controlled by big pharma. It's the software companies that are facilitating this information to travel, which in the US, in the UK, in Australia, is Peter Thiel and Alex Karp and Palantir.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The same people that produce predictive policing software and facial recognition databases for ICE are going to be in charge of your personal health information.
Yeah.
Do you think that do you think that that's something that should just happen without any citizen input, without the ability for you personally to consent to that or not?
Look,
because it doesn't matter at this point what we think. What matters, I guess, is how comfortable you are with unelected proven sociopaths having access to, I'm sorry, not having access to, outright owning every square inch of your cellular structure and vascular system. And respiratory system. Because that's going to be a commodity. Your health information is a commodity. It is. And the ability to target market you is the current and future of marketing. Like, they want your thoughts, and they're pretty open about that. Really?
Neuralink.
No, I mean, seriously watch Whitney's and Johnny Vedmore's discussion about Yuval Harari, right? I'd already written about that I think it was in which one was it? I think it was the one about Jack Dorsey that I did for Whitney's website, Unlimited Hangout, right? But what Harari is talking about at Davos 21, right? It's basically, he's laying it all out, even more clearly, actually, than the Great Reset. If people don't want to read all that, then go and just watch Harari. Because, basically what they're going to do is turn us into data colonies, and they will have complete control over if we go to, he states it, if we go to a protest and we're clapping because we're supposed to clap, but in our mind we're going, fuck this bastard, they read our minds. You'll be arrested.
Yeah, we have.
It's the new evolution. It's the next cognitive revolution that's gonna happen. It's transhumanist fan fiction, what that dude writes. And not only is it transhumanist fan fiction, it's boring and trash ass transhumanist fan fiction. Homo Deus is a terrible fucking book. I can't say that shit enough. I hate that I had to read it. I hate it so much.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Look at the people who are in control of this situation, and just ask yourself if you trust them to have your best interests as their priority. Just ask yourself that question, right? Try and step outside the fear. Try and step outside the gaslighting. Try and step outside the collective hypnosis. Try and remember that viruses have existed on this planet for as long as we have, right?
Well, and here's the other thing. While you're asking yourself if you trust these people with ownership of every aspect of your life, ask yourself what your recourse is currently if you don't.
Exactly. And actually, what is your recourse if you question any element of this entire complex, right? One element, right? I just had a 7-day ban on Twitter because I asked the BBC about why they mentioned that a guy died immediately after the COVID jab, but they didn't make any correlation. I'm not allowed to ask that.
Yeah.
Right?
Why is Hank Aaron dead?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, speaking of, big shout out to Teodros Fikramariam, because he been on smoke with just not taking any of this warp speed COVAX vaccine bullshit. Like, he's been going hard against this shit. So big shout out, my man Teodros on smoke, bruh.
But, all right. You know, this level of censorship for demanding for informed consent. Informed consent doesn't exist anymore, by the way, people. You don't have the right to have informed consent. You know, it's not even freedom. It's human rights. And at the same time, of course, while they're pointing the finger at other countries for their human rights record, they're crushing our own human rights in our own countries.
Yeah. While torturing Julian Assange.
Exactly.
Yeah. And there have been a number of like Western officials and I think even the GenBot said something about it too from in a press briefing. But like about like the safeguards for freedom of the press and the sanctity of it, and like all of these like sort of flowery platitudes about the freedom of the press and the First Amendment and all this kind of shit, and how it's you know, a different era under Biden than it was for Trump because they respect this institution and shit like that. While they're, you know,
see those hearts on the White House lawn on Valentine's Day, Steve? They're beautiful.
the cardboard hearts really they make the torturing of a journalist and publisher go down way better. They make the bombs.
Joe offered his coffee to a reporter. Love is love, Steve.
Oh God,
so beautiful.
The reporter should have drank it so they could have found out what adrenochrome felt like.
Oh, they should have fucking taken a sip and then thrown it on his fucking nuts. That's what they should have done.
I guarantee you Joe Biden only drinks lukewarm coffee. Nobody gives him hot coffee.
You know what? I'm actually not a big hot coffee person either. I like it iced. That's...
Ooh, really?
Yeah, well, I mean, because I always grew up, because I grew up in Florida, so I never really liked hot drinks to begin with. Oh, okay. So I always liked, you know, like iced coffee or, yeah, it's a nice little tangent there.
Actually, yeah, here in Syria, they drink the coffee seriously hot. I don't know how they do it. It's like asbestos mounds. I have to wait like about half an hour until it's drinkable because I don't like it really hot. I like it comfortable, so it's not burning my mouth. But no, they kind of down it in one here.
Yeah, I will drink it hot, but not still boiling.
Yeah, it's pretty much still boiling here.
There's when I lived in Kansas City, there was a Turkish restaurant down the street, and they served their coffee still boiling, and it was like, I mean, had to have been like shooting crack into your dick. Like it was. That shit was intense, man. It was.
Yeah, no, I can relate to that. And the tea is laced with sugar here as well. That's the other thing. It's kind of, how much tea do you want with your sugar?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in, like I said, I grew up in Florida, which is part of the South. So I like my tea really sweet because they have like sweet tea and stuff. And you
Yeah.
know, like same thing with coffee. I prefer my tea iced too. I like, you know.
Yeah, well, okay. Whatever.
I don't always get to. I'll grab coffee on the way to work, and then I'll get to work and I'll start, doing shit. I'm a carpenter, and as I'll set the cup of coffee down, and like 3 hours later, realize that I did. And so it's almost iced at that point because it's been cold as fuck. But unless you've got like quality coffee, when it gets cold, it sucks.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't drink coffee enough to begin with, by the way. I enjoy it when I drink it, but at the same time, like I don't drink it enough to the point where, like, if I need the caffeine, I can get it from just like coffee. So
we went through like 3 pounds of a coffee called Death Wish in the week that we were in DC at the beginning of January. Like
Okay.
Yeah, you'll see, Jones. You will.
because I'll be there.
I don't know what time we've got David McBride later, but David McBride will be giving another against the advice of his lawyers interview to Anonymous Bites Back.
Yes, sir. Big up the Anon. Shout
at some
out,
point
Mark.
today. And yeah. So we'll be in on that.
Yeah. Well, I should probably make a move because I've only got like half an hour more electricity and I need to do a few things before it goes off.
Well, Vanessa, thank you so much. Thanks for
the. Oh no! Thanks for having me back on. It's always good therapy.
Please let people know where they can find your work and where they can find you, how they can support you.
It's getting a bit difficult because I'm actually looking now for alternatives to Patreon after they sort of shat on Ryan.
I closed down our Patreon over that.
Yeah, I know. I'm actually working out a few alternatives and then I'll kind of wean myself off Patreon. But so at the moment I'm still on Patreon, but as soon as I know exactly where I'm moving to, I'll let people know. I have a Telegram account now. Twitter's most likely to chuck me off fairly soon. I mean, I'm on thin ice there. I'm on my second strike on YouTube, so I'm kind of out of here fairly soon.
You're on Rockfin though, right?
Yeah, I'm on Rockfin. I need to get on there and start updating it all. I'm on Library TV. That's been syncing all my YouTube videos, and I'm on Minds. I need to do a whole list because I've just been, you know what it's like. I've just been trying to set up on all these other accounts and trying to get them going and rolling, and it's taking up a huge amount of time, which of course is part of the agenda, right? But my work will be up at Unlimited Hangout, UK column. If people want to follow the UK situation, particularly on COVID, UK column news is absolutely top. That and Off Guardian in the UK. And then RT, yourself, of course, Last American Vagabond. I'll be on with Ryan on Tuesday.
Nice.
Yeah, love Ryan.
Man, Ryan. Okay.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
What?
What you got, Jones?
I will say the same thing I said after our last interview with Whitney Webb. It's 2021. If you have a show and you haven't had Vanessa Beeley on yet. What the fuck are you doing?
Or lately.
Yeah, lately, because just lately. Blue checks, roses. You know exactly what you voted for.
And the cat. You get the cat.
Yeah. Yes.
I'm giving up because she's wide awake now, so she's like, I want to play.
I love it. March 17th, March 18th, free Clovis Versange in DC, and a fuck censorship protest because the absurdity of this situation demands an equal, if not more, level of absurdity in the response. And of course, fuck censorship because I like censorship the same way I like 12 fucked. And whenever Anonymous Bites Back is on, we'll be on. Glory and your boy Steve will be on. Maybe we can get a Tech Ninja on. Who knows? But big up the Anons.
Maybe.
Big ups. Shout out Base God Tech Ninja. Men like Sleepy J. Shout out our wonderful chat. Love you all, guys. And we'll see you soon.
SlowNewsDayShow.com is the website. We have a Discord. You should get in it. It's frequently hilarious.
Wait, real quick. We have some more Super Rays. Thank you, Zane Griffin, for the $2 Super Ray. And thank you, Paul B, for the $5 Super Ray. Thanks for a great show as ever. Thank you for the Super Ray.
Oh, yeah. Let's see. I don't think we're doing an afternoon show because of the Anonymous Bites Back thing, but that will be on Rockfin. So catch it, look for it. It'll be happening. Do get in the Discord. If you can donate to the GoFundMe to help get us to DC, please do that. Although at this point, you should probably just PayPal or Venmo me directly. Those links will go in the description because I can't remember them off the top of my head. Because I suck at this. Yeah. I'll eventually get better.
Setting a great example for the youth, Steve.
Yeah. Yeah. I do in so many other ways, though. I figure maybe not having the how to directly give me money thing at the ready is okay, given the subsequent reasons that I do.
That's why we love you, Steve.
Model example for the youngsters. I love you guys. I do. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for watching the show. Thanks to everybody that sent tips over on the Rockfin. You guys are awesome. If you haven't made your free Rockfin account, the fuck is wrong with you? YouTube is on its way out as a platform anyway. It's just going to be cable news on the internet. That's all it's going to be fucking good for. Why would you want to be there? Free to sign up on the Rockfin. If you dig what we do, you can endorse the channel. It's $9.99 a month, and you get everybody else's premium content on the network. We're gonna go full time here starting April, so we are absolutely going to need you guys' support. So I apologize in advance for that, but we're going to be making some changes in terms of like coverage and stuff. We're going to be coming at the rest of independent media fucking hard, not in terms of talking shit about them, but just showing them how it's supposed to be done.
Yep.
How
Scoop Gang does it.
That's gonna be fun. Thanks, Sleepy Josh, on the ones and twos. Thanks to my better than your co-host, Gloria Jones. Thanks always to Vanessa Beeley. You're welcome back anytime. Yeah, we'll see you soon, guys. Good luck to us all.
Bye.